All right, so we just recently received a Tidewater. And what is a Tidewater? Let me kind of explain the story here. So I am representing a seller on a transaction, and we have the property on the market. And we did an appraisal to the property, but the appraisal came back lower. So the appraiser had sent out a Tidewater. So what this is really about is what happens if a home does not appraise. So let me explain to you how it actually works. So here on the screen, as you can see, I am actually representing the seller. He owns this house right here. And we also have a buyer that's looking to purchase the home. The offer came in at $585,000. The buyer that's buying this property offered $585,000, but also asking for $10,000 towards closing costs. So the seller has decided to give the buyer $10,000. When this happens, when a buyer is buying a property, they typically have to find a lender. So they work with a lender, which is the loan originator. Now that lender will get the buyer qualified for a certain dollar amount to purchase a home. Then what happens is the lender has to find a bank that will finance that buyer for $585,000. But then the bank says, yes, we will give you $585,000 to borrow. However, we need to hire a third party, which is an appraiser, needs to go out to appraise this property to come up with the true value of the property. Now, this is how it works. Appraiser goes out, they appraise the property. If it appraises below that, then they issue out a Tidewater. So now the lender reaches back on out to the lender, and the lender has the underwriting department where they underwrite the loan. So the lender now reaches on out to me, the listing agent, and also to the buyer agent to let them know that the property is no longer appraising for $585,000 at this time. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna show you here, when it comes to appraisal, what is an appraisal? This is where a third party actually goes out and appraises the value of the property, but the appraiser will appraise the property. Now keep in mind, an appraisal is based upon one's opinion. When an appraiser goes out there, they have 3 different approaches when they look at a property. So the first one is the comparable approach. What is the comparable? Now, the comparable is basically the house that they're appraising. They take a look at homes around the surrounding areas that is like-kinded, same square footage, 200 square feet below or 200 square feet above. They take a look at the house, the structure, the community, and they go about 2 miles out if they can't find anything. So we have the comparable approach. Then number 2, we have the actually income approach. Now, what is the income approach? Typically, this is really used for multifamily. And what that means is, with the multifamily, it's more like a business. So they take a look at how much money's coming in and how much is going out, and it's based upon the cap rate. And that's how they appraise the property, but that's only for multifamily. This is not for single family residents. Now we have the build approach, which is the cost to build the home. So if this home was to burn down, for them to reconstruct the home, will it cost $585,000? So a lot of appraisers will use this, and also real estate agents will use this. Now here, once the home doesn't appraise, a Tidewater is issued out to the underwriter and also to the lender. This is where the lender will contact us. However, if we go back here, the appraiser will contact the lender directly, but not by phone. It's only through an email, because here's the thing, they always hire a third-party company. So when the lender orders an appraisal, they use a system, which is the third-party company, and they do a round robin. So you may have 3 different appraisal companies out here to appraise the property. They send out a request. One of the companies gets picked to go out to do the appraisal on behalf of the bank. But the appraiser will never be in line of communication with the lender. Now, the appraiser will contact me as the listing agent to schedule the appointment, which I have the appraiser's contact information. But now, once the appraisal has been ordered and we issue a Tidewater, there is no communication over the phone. So the Tidewater process, this is how it works, okay? The appraiser provides a Tidewater notice to the lender, designated point of contact, which is what we call a POC. So the point of contact would be the lender, not the bank. The next thing will happen is details of the request are provided to the POC, right? The point of contact. So what happens is the appraiser is contacting the lender directly at this point by email only, and letting the underwriting department know it's not approving for 585. The point of contact notifies the agent, so they will notify me, and also they're going to notify the buyer's agent. Now, the point of contact has 2 working days to return the information to the appraiser. So as soon as you get this, your lender needs to forward this on over to you as a buyer immediately. Then you need to work on this. Your agents need to work on this and try to get this property approved to the price. Now, let's take a look at this. The next one, the appraiser is not at the liberty to discuss content. So what that means is the appraiser has no obligations to make a phone call to the lender or to the agents like whatsoever. It's just an email because this is done through a third party. It has to be an arm's length transaction. The next one, additional information is reviewed by the appraisal. So what that means is once we get to all the information that our appraiser needs, he's going to review it. Then once he comes up with a conclusion, he's going to send that on over to the underwriter, right, with the final. So the point of contact is notified of the completed order. So what this means is as I go through the process and I work with the appraiser, they will notify the lender of all the comps that they have. The lender underwriter performs a review of the appraisal and completes the notice of evaluation, which is the NOV. So now that they have it, this is where the appraiser appraises the property. He has his information, I'm disputing that, and then I'm sending over my comps. Once he comes with that final conclusion, then he sends everything back over to the underwriter at this point. So the next step would be the appraisal is to provide to the buyer. So what this means is once the appraiser gathers all the information that they need and they come to that conclusion of the full valuation of the property and the appraisal of that property, then at that point the buyers will get it. Okay. Now, requirements of the additional comparable sales provided. Okay, so as an agent, this is what we need to do. So I actually only have 2 days to complete this. So as soon as that Tidewater comes out, I have 48 hours. If I don't respond within 48 hours with the information that they need, the appraisal that they have, that's the appraisal that they're going to use, okay? Because at this point, I'm challenging the appraisal, right? Must be in a format similar to comparables and within 6 months of sales. So what this means is he's telling me that, hey, when I send over the comps, it's gotta be comparable to that property, square footage within the surrounding areas, features and upgrades, because I'm gonna give a full description of it, but the sales have to be within 6 months. So the third one here is a brief narrative describing similarities. So again, all that means is it's got to be something like the home that we are selling. You can't compare a 5,000 square foot home to a 8,000 square foot home. They're too far apart. So it has to be very similar, okay? What happens if the property does not appraise? Well, if the property does not appraise, okay, there's a couple things that could happen. For this example, it was at $585,000. If it comes in at $575,000, once a buyer receives the appraisal, they send this on over to the buyer's agent. The buyer's agent will send over an addendum for a request for a price reduction. If we are not interested in coming down on price because the seller is like, hey, I'm not gonna sell it, we just cancel out of the deal. Buyer gets back their earnest money deposit, but lost out on the appraisal and also on the inspection fees. The seller loses out on time of the property being off the market, so it has to go back on the market. But the problem is this for the seller. When an appraisal is done, there's a case number that's attached to the property. So if we put it back on the market, what's gonna happen is when they do another appraisal with another buyer, another appraisal is gonna see that there's a case number that was attached to it. He's gonna pull it up and he's gonna say, hey, it only appraised for $575. So that also hurts the seller. Now, in this case, should the buyer still be interested in the property, they could do a couple things. They could still move forward, but they would have to come up with the remaining balance, which is the difference. So if it was at $575 on the appraisal, but our offer was at $585, they would have to come up with another 10 grand. Or buyer and seller could meet down the middle, or the seller could just reduce the price. So there's so many different scenarios out there. This doesn't mean it's a dead deal. It's about how to work through the deal. And sometimes we can challenge the appraiser and force that price to go up. Now, I understand that does benefit the seller if we force the price to go up. But in this case, it's a little bit different because in today's market, it's starting to get very aggressive. What happens is a lot of buyers will offer about $10,000 more than the asking price, but they're asking for $10,000 towards closing costs. So basically all they're doing is rolling the closing costs over into the loan. So again, it's a really case-by-case basis. So this is important. If it doesn't appraise, make sure you get the Tidewater. Have your agent challenge it immediately. And I've beat out a couple appraisers sometimes because they do make mistakes as well. Now, if you guys like more video content like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Other than that, until next time, I'm Chakits. Peace!